everyone, welcome back to the Bene channel. Today my guest is one of the greatest activists for justice, peace, and the environment in the world. His name is Reverend Lennox Yearwood, and he is a longtime board member of Bene and the founder and president of Hip Hop Caucus. Rev, thank you so much for being here today. It is such an honor to be talking with you.
No, it's so good to talk with you as well. How are you?
Thank you. Oh, I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. So, Rev, we've seen an amazing week of protests across the country after the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery. What is your message to us? What do you think of all this, and how are you feeling?
Well, I have mixed feelings. I mean, the feelings you have when you see again a person of color, particularly a black person, killed in this country by the police in an unjust and inhumane, horrific way. It breaks your heart, particularly for those of us as people of color who have not only gone through that ourselves. I've gone through that, unfortunately, many times. And we've also seen that many of our young people have to get what we call the speech about what it means just to be safe in America. And so, it's a time that we feel that this needs to end. But there's also encouragement because we feel there's a momentum shift. We see so many more people, particularly people who are white and other people who are not only being allies, because I think it's one thing to be an ally, but looking to be an accomplice, looking to be on the front lines, looking to be as passionate and as outraged and as just invigorated to fight for justice. And that's encouraging. I mean, that's something that I don't think we've seen ever, period. So that means that we as humans are getting much better at fighting for one another. So I am, again, you can't be nothing but heartbroken over those who have lost their lives, as you mentioned, from Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed by a policeman who had retired or was fired, whatever it is, obviously George Floyd, and Tony McDade, who was also killed. We have to look up Tony McDade because trans lives matter as well in this conversation. So definitely disappointed, disheartened, but excited about the movement that is growing, that is energizing, that is just taken to the streets and in the suites, as we say. And so I'm excited about that, and we're making some great headway as we shift policy too, because we know that either you shift policy or policy will definitely shift or change you. So we're excited about the policies that are being moved across this country for racial justice as well.
Yes, thank you so much. And I know of all of your amazing work with young people. And for some people my age, frustration right now is boiling over into violence. And so in these very difficult days, why do you still stand by nonviolence?
Well, nonviolence is not just a tactic. It is a way of life. It is a belief. For those of us who are spiritual or not, that there is something larger in play. Clearly, if you look back 65 years ago, there are many people who are looking back to the killing of Emmett Till, which was the spark of the civil rights movement in the 20th century. Many feel that the killing of George Floyd will be, it is to many, a spark for what we're looking for civil rights and human rights in the 21st century. So I think that clearly, I know you weren't, and I wasn't around when Emmett Till was killed. So I think that means that whoever was back then, who was 17, 18, 20, 30, 40, however old back in 1955, I think that you now understand that those people who saw that moment most of them are no longer with us. But it sparked something then to create this cycle. Now, unfortunately, as we see, it didn't go away at the end of Emmett Till. So clearly, it takes an amount of time, and that's why nonviolence is so important. Because if you're going for violence and to compete, we're literally just, from a practical sense, outgunned. There's no way that we have as many guns as those who are in other positions. So that's not the way to go. That doesn't make sense. That movement will not survive for a long time. So nonviolent is the way to go, simply for a number of reasons. One is the way to go from just the smart strategy. If we don't have as many weapons and don't want that many weapons, and so it's important for us to approach it from a nonviolent. Two, a spiritual aspect. We believe that we're part of this long arc of justice that we are part of. And so even if what we do now in 2020, if it still continues into 2055 or 2080, in some aspects that we're chipping away at it. And then I think the last part is for ourselves. I think the nonviolent, to me, protest mantra, it allows you not to eat away at yourself. I think a lot of times in this movement, people who want to take violence, but the violence they want to put forth on somebody else begins to eat away at themselves, and they become depressed, and they become somewhat jaded and become bitter. And that's not what this movement's about. If you are becoming bitter and jaded and depressed, and you're feeling ostracized and just evil and angry, then they won. Then the other side has won. They either have won directly by what they're putting forth against people as far as injustice, and they won against you as far as just quitting because of bitterness. We call it bitter root. And so not to have that bitter root, the nonviolence tactic and training and lifestyle allows us not to have that bitter root take place in us. So we can continue to be vibrant and believe in love and believe in a better day.
Wow, thank you. And then I was wondering, what advice do you have for white and non-African American people like myself who want to be not just better allies, but better accomplices and with you guys?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is that it's to recognize, to learn about the history of the systemic racism and institutional racism, because unfortunately, a lot of our schools wasn't teaching that, and that was on purpose in many cases. So you have to now learn something and learn that history. Two, I think we have to have our brothers and sisters of a lighter hue who have to understand that the system can cause them to not even understand where they're fearful. What I mean by that, for instance, there's been a cry and a push to defund the police, simply meaning that instead of spending literally the billions of dollars that go into literally purchasing military equipment, for instance, that they can just purchase and then just build tanks and be an army in our communities. It simply means that we're taking these police like we do with EMTs. We only call EMTs when there's an emergency to go come pick somebody up. But they're only designed to do that job. When they come, the ambulance comes, it comes to pick that person up, and they're prepared. Like a firefighter. We don't, firefighters don't have tanks or have other things. They have what they need to do their job. Protective services, which we should have, of course, so that we can deal with our community. But we don't want to criminalize or militarize our police department. When I say defund the police, when I say for our white accomplices and allies, is that sometimes they hear that and they become afraid because they then think that, man, I actually need that mechanism to make me safe. And you have to kind of just wonder where did that come from? Where did that level of fear, where did that get placed in you? Somewhere along the line, through media or TV or through something was placed in you to become fearful. And that's the same fear that we see within our police and with people who are weaponizing 9/11, calling the cops on people because they want whatever they want. And so we have to deal with that. The last thing I would say that's very important is to be visible. There has been a tendency that our white accomplices need to speak up more, and they don't need to be silent. But they also need to realize that this is not just a moment. In other words, that they're speaking up at this moment, and then when it goes away, they can get back to whatever they were doing. That's not what that entails. What that means is that it literally completely changes how you view something, and this becomes a part of your strategy. So nonviolence, we folks I'm with it, like Bene and others, then this becomes a part. Racial justice becomes a part of my work on climate activism and climate change. Climate justice and racial justice go together. Same thing. So you begin to see it all. We break them into silos and we bring those things together.
Yes. And that kind of leads well into my next question. So I know that you've done a lot of amazing work to fight climate change as well. And can you help explain to me and our listeners how the connections between racism, poverty, war, and environmental destruction work together?
Well, definitely. Well, one of my hat is in regards to years, in regards to what many reports have said, how much time we have before we can't make the kind of change that we need to make. If we don't make changes now, the next 10 years, then we're stuck. And then we're creating a situation. It's almost like if you're using a permanent marker, at some point in time, you can't wipe it off. And so you have this limited time when you put it on to quickly get it off. If not, it's there. Same thing with our climate. If we don't act within the next 10 years, the die will be cast. And unfortunately, that can lead to horrific consequences. First and foremost, you cannot do climate justice without doing racial justice. They are linked together. And so people need to first understand that. Two, the issues of how we mentioned poverty and pollution, and brutality and militarism, all of those isms go together because there's a sense of the extractive mentality that is behind that, meaning that you don't have any respect for that humanity. And all you really care about is just extracting. So you're extracting from the earth. You're extracting from one's community. You don't care. You're extracting. And so you don't care, and you're literally not showing the decency to respect their human life or look for the next generation and what they need to have. So when you have that extractive, and we've had that, unfortunately, in our country, that extractive mentality, that leads to a lot of the chaos we see, particularly within the movement for Black lives, immigration, women's rights, on and on and on and on. But on the flip side, as we're fighting a lot of the same people who are putting forth those things, in other words, the same people who are putting forth militarism, people who are putting forth our dependence on fossil fuels, the same people who are putting forth police departments who don't care about the community. The thing is this, if we can tackle that entity and come together, then we can actually break all those things down. That's the actual joy of all of this, is that if we silo ourselves and we have racial justice over here, climate justice over here, fighting and wars over here, we can't win. But once we begin to fight them all together, then we can win. I've always said this, that organized people beat organized money every single time. So the minute that we become organized, the minute that we win.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You're making me excited. And then my next question. Rev, during these difficult times, where do you find hope? And what words of encouragement do you have for young people?
Well, that's tough. I mean, you know, the easy answer is like you just find hope, hang in there. That's not reality. The reality is that, you know, one of the things I would encourage people to do is to check out our podcast.
Yes.
It's called The Coolest Show on Climate Change. You can find it at think100climate.com. But we did an interview recently with Emerald Garner. Emerald Garner is the daughter of Eric Garner. Eric Garner who was choked in 2014. We all saw him. He was the first, in essence, you saw with the phrase of "I cannot breathe."
Yeah.
And Eric Garner's sister began to fight for her father, Erica. And one of the things that we realized with Erica is that while she was fighting for her father, she was very upset and angry. And then she had an asthma-induced heart attack. She was only 27 years old. And also the connection we mentioned earlier is that while their father was killed in an illegal chokehold in New York, um, uh, most people of color live within 30 miles of a coal-fired power plant, causing pollution, which causes asthma and cancer. I say all this because even though he was being choked physically by the police, he was also being choked by the folks who are polluting our communities, and his family was as well. So I asked Errol, to your point, how do you stay hopeful? And she said, she takes it day by day. There are some days that are good and some days that are bad. There are days when literally she now has the grandchildren of Eric Garner, who when they see the life in a video, they see the life of their grandfather being squeezed out before them, these babies start to cry. And she has to then be there for them. But she doesn't give up hope because she believes in justice. And I think that's the one thing in this whole process. As long as you hold on so tight to the thought and belief that justice is real, then you can have hope. If you don't have that kind of hope, then literally, again, you won't benefit you. Now, for my folks who have a spiritual background, and I would encourage everybody, now listen, I don't care what background you come from, but I would hope that you have something outside of yourself to pull on. What I mean by that, too many of us in this movement pull on ourselves. We think we can do it all, it's all on us. That doesn't work. And so I would hope that you would find something outside of yourself. For me, it's obviously my spirituality. For others, it could be nature, it could be whatever. But it could be your family. But you've got to find something outside of yourself to pull on. That will also give you hope, because then you will also fighting with the belief that what I'm doing has meaning and matters. If you do that, then not only will you be hopeful, and not only will you find yourself literally smiling at the most unique times, but then you'll find yourself also winning, and you're actually being a movement where you can attract people to it. That's the ultimate goal. That how do we build a movement that is hopeful, that can build the ultimate beloved community?
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. And then my last question is, Rev, what does nonviolence mean to you?
Say that part again. You broke up at the
I'm sorry. What does nonviolence mean to you?
Yeah. For me, it's a society when we as humans decide not to cause harm to one another. It's a society when we can feel the pains of another person. Literally, it could be someone you don't know, someone who looks different from you, or it could be a loved one. But it means that your life and your desire is not to cause violence. And not even just physical violence, but mental violence, verbal violence, any kind of violence to tear that person down. And I'm telling you, the minute that our society becomes a non-violent society, we begin to stop hurting one another and stop hurting those who are around us, then this world will be an amazing place. Right now, we're in trouble because we look at violence to fix conflicts, look at violence to find solutions to arguments. We use violence to, if people are in trouble, either from mental or something going on, we use violence to attack them. We use violence in our own movement to hurt one another, to tear each other down. And that's a horrible, horrible place. But the minute that we adopt a nonviolence mentality, man, And we can begin to just see that we can live in a world where we are not hurting, simply hurting one another. Then this world will be a much better place. And I think that's what we're all striving for. And that's what I'm striving for, is to have a place in a world that simply is just not violent. That it is a place that is kind, a place that is respectful, and a place that is loving. We all can be together.
Well, Rev, thank you so much. This has been such an honor for me, and thank you for taking the time.
No, definitely.
Thanks.
Stay encouraged.
Yes. Stay strong, Rev. Thank you.
Oh, you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.